All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, Ian, for that introduction. And thank you for helping me break a sweat there as we, worked out a bit. So thank you for joining us for this panel today. And even as we continue talking about, COVID accelerated digital transformation, we really want to just look at, how has this pandemic aided, the digital transformation or the expansion of tech within various sectors. And with me today on my panel, I've got two gentlemen. We've got Sven Beckham from Intel Corp, and I've got Juan Rodriguez from Entrust. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. Gentlemen, welcome to our discussion today. I'm going to start with you, Sven. Maybe you could introduce yourself.
I think we're going to have a dance-off with Juan, so you can rank and rate us, but a lovely way to start it. Yes, my name is Sven. I'm based in Johannesburg. I've been with Intel for many years. I look after our business consumption for Eastern Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Married with 2 kids. Love tech. Have been in tech all my life, and it's an honor to be here.
All right. Thank you, Sven. And Juan Rodriguez.
Hello, Francis. Hello, Sven. It's a pleasure to be here today with all you. My name is Juan Rodriguez. I am working at Entrust. I'm the responsible of the digital identity in the EMEA region. I'm married. I'm closing to be a father because I got my wife pregnant. So we are so happy for this news. So we will see. And that's it.
All right. Congratulations to you, and all the best with that.
Thank you.
So, gentlemen, we just want to dive in straight into our discussion today. And when we look at, the COVID pandemic, and when we look at, what has happened in the past couple of months or the past couple of just close to a year plus, we have seen a lot of things that have transpired within the tech space. We have seen a lot of things that have transpired within various sectors, globally. And one of these things that we have seen is something that we have come to know as COVID accelerated digital transformation, or CADIT. So really, even as we begin our discussion today, we have seen various institutions like, learning institutions adopting e-learning kind of platforms to be able to continue with their programs. We have seen organizations that we thought would never embrace, remote working, actually getting into that space. So the first thing that I would want us to really look at is when you look at different sectors, how has how has the response been to COVID-19 by different organizations in different sectors? And Sven, maybe you can start us off on this. What is your view on this? What have you seen across the industries in regards to tech?
Sure, thank you. It's a big question. I think we're under one of the biggest science projects that we've ever seen in our lifetime. And, if you had to think about 2 years ago, people that had intention to go digital, or they had a 3 or a 5 roadmap, and that was, just thrown in the dustbin, because I think if we've looked how we've just had to adopt fast, and the center of this has just been digital adoption. So I think that businesses were already in the journey, benefited from that. But in a lot of institutions, basic services, education, businesses, small to medium businesses, we were caught completely off guard. I've been talking about digital transformation for the last probably 15, 20 years. And I think what we've been able to achieve globally in the last 2 years is probably the equivalent of 7 years of work. So just this radical acceleration, it's asked fundamental questions about employee productivity, business models. If you didn't have a digital strategy, that had to be basically turned upside down in a matter of a week and figure out what the priorities. So business models have been challenged. For me, a big highlight is if you watch where Zoom was 2 years ago, it's probably got the market cap of the 7 airlines today. So that just puts it in perspective how radical it got flipped. Education, I think there were folks that benefited, and then there were massive gaps. And that's just highlighted the realization of we don't have enough bricks and mortars, especially on the African continent, to give education, let alone one-to-one education. So that is still, I think, a massive gap, and we need to move faster. And digital is at the heart of that strategy for both the students and the teachers. If I think the main drivers and some of the trends, just to give you some data points, you hear this word ubiquitous computing. It's just computers everywhere. It's in the car, it's in the satellites, it's in my mobile handset. It must be seamless, and there's such an expectation to deliver on top of that. And we've seen a CAGR of raw compute data requirements is like growing at a 60% CAGR. And that is just for basic compute everywhere. If you look at connectivity requirements, absolutely pervasive, and you look at the demands and the trends on 5G requirements and how that's going to automate factories and lower the cost between a physical device and another physical device. Those costs are coming down, and 5G is absolutely game-changing. And then you see the AI workloads. That is going to be the workload of today, tomorrow, and the future. That is really going to change fundamentally how we work. And on top of that, the cloud capability. So being able to burst out, and I've got one example I'd just like to highlight, is in South Africa, they had a research high-performance compute center that went live in 2020, and that was 3 days before the COVID really kicked in. And within 3 days, that compute center was completely overwhelmed by government agencies trying to do research and support. And we were able to mobilize some relief from Intel Foundation. We have a relief center, but it just shows what we thought we needed. We just are completely underestimating how fast the real raw compute that is needed globally. So yeah, mega trends, fundamentally driven by demand and compute, the network edge growth. That means like these raw video analytics that are maybe doing traffic surveillance, down to AI, which is going to be the workload of the future. So very exciting, but very daunting. And it is really figuring out what is the capacity that you can future-proof yourself for the next 2 years. And final point for me is that the supply chain, ladies and gentlemen, is under tremendous pressure. And I think none of us can escape that in our daily lives in terms of amount of consumption that has happened. And we see numerous delays across all industries. So that is going to be a burning point for the foreseeable future.
All right. Thank you, Sven. And as you've talked about, even educational institutions and the kind of transformation that they have had to go through, we have seen quite a shift in this area. And maybe just switching to one, I'd really like to know what your opinion is. Are we likely to see this kind of sustained kind of mode of learning in using digital platforms, or are people likely to shift back to the physical mode of learning, once most likely when everyone is vaccinated and we have less and less cases? So I don't know what your opinion is.
My opinion is very clear on this, Francis. At the end, when everybody will get vaccine, when everybody will be vaccinated, I believe that a high percentage will come back to their offices and they will restart their normal lives, more or less. But the reality after that is that a high percent as well of the people, they will continue developing all the digital tools, because it is a unique opportunity what we have in front of us, and it's forcing many different industries, many different agencies in order to be prepared for that demand. So many people are exploiting a lot right now e-learning platforms because this is a fantastic way to continue getting new courses, learning a lot from home, giving those people at home the right tools in order to get access to those platforms in a secure way, which is very important to mention this, because the security in this new world is going to become a really important matter that everybody must address somehow. And then it will be a kind of hybrid mode, okay? So depending on the country where you live, maybe the penetration in the learning session, in the platform, on the cloud services will be higher. And, and maybe in other countries, the penetration will be less. But anyway, at the end of the day, it will be a complete hybrid mode for sure. So that's what I think.
All right. Thank you, Juan. Indeed, we are likely to see a hybrid mode of working, because if you look at it critically, this pandemic has made us see that a lot of issues can be sorted out, by tech. You have less people having to travel to the office, so you have less traffic jams. There's less wastage of time, and companies don't lose so much money, and the economy as well does not suffer. But talking about economies, and I'm still with you, Juan, on this. When you look at African governments, what do you see in terms of their response towards, disruptive technologies? Have they adopted them? And if they have not, because for the longest time we thought that, there's no way government employees can work from home, but we've been able to see that, being embraced. But what's your thought on that? Have they embraced it? If they haven't embraced it, what would your advice to African governments be?
Okay, I think that many governments are doing the job. They are doing the right things. They are taking the right directions, the right trends. So here the investment, the budgets they got available is the critical point, because many governments, they have many plans, good plans in order to digital transform their agencies, but the problem is that they don't have enough budget to afford that. Anyway, what I'm observing in the market, in the African market, is that there are many initiatives in order to try to make the world more digital. So I'm going to put you an example that we are testing in a couple of countries, which I believe is quite representative. I'm talking about the healthcare sector. And as you know, with the pandemic, the situation really stressed those services in all countries, basically. And the professionals, the doctors, the nurses, they were so afraid whenever they were receiving people with COVID-19. So what we have done in order to try to, to interact as less as possible with the PCs in any different hospitals is to make a project like a passwordless project. What that means, that passwordless project? What we have implemented is the possibility that when a doctor needs to go to their computer in order to update any data or in order to check any data from any citizen, what we have done is the possibility to allow this doctor with security to get access, to log into their PC without typing any password, without typing anything, just with a simple app which is downloaded into their mobile phone and by Bluetooth technology to be authenticated automatically. And then, thanks to this situation, the doctor can get access directly to their databases, to their information without any problem, without touching, without typing anything. So this is brilliant, honestly speaking, because we reduce the interaction and the touch with the different devices that all personnel from any hospital are using, because as you can imagine, the same machines, the same PCs are going to be used by different people, depending where they are, you know. So these are the things that we believe are helping the world to be better, to be digitalized, and to be secure, okay? So that's the reason why, I mean, this is an example. I try to put an example in order to make you think how many, what type of initiatives many governments are taking so far. So I think it's a good example to demonstrate that all governments really want to invest on technology. They really want to digitalize their systems, their agencies, but the problem, obviously, at the end is the budget, always.
Yes, indeed. The problem is always, it all comes down to the bottom line, you know, the bottom line figure, yes. The budget. Yeah. And yes. It's interesting, you know, that you've talked about budgets, because, you know, the issue with most organizations, as you have mentioned, is that they are now operating on a hybrid mode of working. Some are working remotely, some are working at the office, some come in shifts, you know, in 2 weeks you're at the office, 2 weeks you're at home. And maybe for Sven, what I would really, you know, want us to look at is how can organizations now plan their strategies, given that this will become the new norm, the new mode of working? How can they plan their strategies in the next 5 years by including tech, you know, and having a digital strategy within that? And what kind of gaps or what kind of niches can they take advantage of, in your opinion? And maybe after you have spoken, I would ask Juan to also contribute as well.
Right, thanks for the question. So I think, you know, for me, fundamentally, 5-year strategies, I don't know if we need to throw those in the dustbin, because the world has been turned upside down, right? So I think it's good to have a long-term plan, sort of 3-5 year horizon, but you've got to be agile to adjust. So I think it's have the intent where you would like to go, but the speed of digital is not slowing down, it's accelerating. So you have to have the mindset of adapt, resilience, being able to learn on the fly. Culture is going to play a big element in business and government agencies about, you know, being able to accept making mistakes and pivoting, right? And bringing that to the fore, because that is the heart of innovation. So if you can take some of those attributes and those values and instill them in your business of having that flexibility, agility, and being able to move and innovate, that is the mindset that is going to need. And I think that's also going to have to be embedded strongly in our universities and our school systems about the resilience and the ability to innovate and failures and adopt and change. So that has a long filter through to foundational level. So for businesses, you know, things to watch out, as I said, some of the mega trends. The first question I would ask a government agency or official or in business is, tell me about what the company's digital data strategy is. Because at the heart is, if you don't have any data or any analytics or some sort of fundamental data strategy, you cannot bolt on any services, because as you've seen is the technology is a way to the means, right? Once you've identified a pain point, and then you can go and figure out what you need to go and address that. There is technology, endless technology today. The insight and the data that allows us to pivot and make critical decisions is where the real value is that you're able to extract, both for citizens, for agencies, for businesses. And those insights are going to be able to, timely insights, to give you the ability to pivot. But fundamentally, and I think a couple of people have mentioned this on the conferences I've been listening, and I spoke in my keynote about AI, is the tech gives you the ability to scale, right? At incredible pace, both upwards and downwards, being able to adjust based on the needs, right? So if we want to open today in South Africa, I've been very frustrated because I haven't been able to get my digital license for my car. 2 years in the pandemic, and only today are we launching the app in South Africa for your car registration. And that's been incredibly frustrating, right? As just an average citizen, I'm just going to stand in a queue, there's COVID, no on, off. So the technology is there. It's a ways to a means. It gives you the scale. It brings down the economies of cost, and it allows you to differentiate. And innovation is a nice buzzword, but you have to have strong values and strong culture behind it to really adopt the transformation.
All right, thank you, Sven. The speed of digital is not slowing down, it is actually accelerating. Juan, your thoughts?
I really agree with Sven. To be honest, I think that the first thing any government should have in mind is a strategy, a real strategy, what type of digital transformation they are going to afford. It was a great example that Sven was putting before, that it was really frustrated to get their driving license. You know, he was applying because he wanted to have his driver license, but he couldn't due to the pandemic. So right now, what is happening is that many governments are setting up different services they are trying to put online very, very quickly. But what they are not assuming, or what they are not really aware, is that, okay, it's good or it's nice to have a way to apply for your driving license. That's good. But the problem is, do you secure the identity of those citizens who are going to apply for that driving license? I think this is critical. One of the first things everybody should think about is to have a secure digital identity for their citizens. Once we've got resolved that, is when those citizens will be enabled to apply for different services with different government agencies, okay? And this is absolutely critical. It's like, for example, when many civil servants, they have to work at home during the pandemic. And the agencies told them, listen guys, you have to go back home and from home to work. But what type of security measures they are thinking or they are setting up in order to make secure that work from home? Very few agencies, very few governments are thinking really about this. And this is critical. So that's what I would like to mention. First, to have a strategy. Second, to decide what type of services we would like to bring or we would like to offer to our citizens. And then with security. Let's make sure that everybody is working or is interacting with us with security, with enough security to have a real digital identity. Because otherwise, we will have a lot of fraud. And this is something that we don't want. Okay? So that's my opinion.
All right, thank you so much, Juan. And indeed, there are a lot of opportunities that we can take advantage of in this space that we are in right now. And there are a lot of adjustments, you know, that organizations and governments need to do in order to, you know, position themselves well for the next couple of years. Because again, as Sven said, the speed of digital is not slowing down, it's accelerating. So we must, you know, accelerate with it. So gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. It's been a wonderful panel session. Sven Beckham, Emerging Markets Director for Government and Education at Intel Corp. And we've got Juan Rodriguez, Sales Director, Digital Identity at Entrust. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having this conversation with you. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for this panel. I have been your moderator, Francis Mwangi, and please do enjoy the rest of the summit.